Welcome to episode 1 of the Dogmatic Approach, the opinionated podcast where we talk a little bit about reality and kind of success, growth, things of that nature. I'm the host today, Devin McGuire, and currently with my co-host, Hannah Ortiz.
Hello.
And, we're going to kind of jump a little bit right into it today. Our main topic is going to just be about making a change. This whole podcast is going to be a little bit about growing yourself, kind of changing yourself a little bit. And we kind of felt that the first episode being about making a change specifically, because we have experience with that, we can, tell a little bit about our stories.
I think it sets the right foot. You know what I mean? We're making a change to kind of start this podcast to document our successes, to create a community where people can document their successes, where we can kind of support other people can support us. So I think making a change is a good first step in that direction.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, ultimately, this podcast is going to serve as a little bit of a guide, a dogma, if you would say, in in kind of growing yourself and kind of achieving whatever your goals are from any starting point. So, making a change just kind of made sense, because for anybody who's listening to this, we're going to get into some ruts that we've been in, and if you've been in that rut or you're in that rut right now,
I'll help you get out of it. Not get out of it, but find ways to work around it.
A stepping stool. Exactly.
Ruts aren't about crawling your way straight out of it. It's about building stairs into that wall to kind of climb out.
Yeah.
So, on that note, Devin, what the fuck do you know about making change?
What do I know about making a change? For those of you guys who are listening that don't know me personally, I am a residential real estate broker. Some of my friends will definitely kind of know the story of how I got to this point. But it definitely was not my plan A. It was not my first plan.
I don't even think it was a plan B.
It was never in my plans. My first job was kind of selling stuff. It was selling laptops, because I have a tech background. Just at Staples. I wasn't making a commission. It wasn't a real sales job. I was basically a cashier most of the time, or a stock monkey. But occasionally I would definitely do, sales and talk to people about selling laptops. And I was always really bad at it. Because I always took the approach of educating people first, which, again, if any of you guys are on my social media, you see that I'd post a lot of videos educating about real estate. It's actually a huge benefit. But when I first started, I thought that sales was all about kind of lying your way to getting people to spend the most money. And I just didn't feel comfortable with that. I felt it was dishonest.
That's fair.
Yeah, and that's kind of why I never imagined myself getting into being a real estate broker of all things, especially with this idea of what a real estate broker is. Being, what a real estate broker is, being very kind of pad your pockets. We've talked about this, the idea of
dickish, some would say.
Yeah, kind of dickish. The kind of people who cut in front of you in their BMW when you're on your way to school, and then honk at you for being in their way and have a Bluetooth headpiece the whole time.
The kind of guys, I want you to think AirPods, that's what they're called. Earpods.
Well, I don't want to go saying AirPods, because there's a lot of brokers here who have AirPods.
Well, I'm talking about you.
I'm not talking about any of those. No, but definitely that idea of what a real estate broker is. I never anticipated being here. I actually originally started, of course, with an IT background, because I kind of wanted IT as a plan B. That was my original plan B. And my plan A was mechanical and explosives engineering, which is definitely a large career change to where I am now.
For sure. How did you kind of get into that?
I had originally started, in high school academically, I was a pretty focused kid. I kept a average, 3.5 GPA, that sort of thing. Did well on standardized tests. I skated through high school pretty easily. I never really focused or applied myself much.
Was never really challenged.
Yeah, by high school, especially APS. For those of you who are from Albuquerque, you kind of know what I'm talking about. Where it's APS isn't always the most difficult thing to go to, especially since I went to a charter school. That was very focused. It was originally a vocational school. It was focused on getting people who had dropped out of high school already through high school to get a high school diploma. So it kind of had that foundation to begin with, which definitely gave off the idea that it wasn't hard to pass the classes. It wasn't hard to get through all that stuff. Because again, they made it purposefully easy for people who have struggled in the past. So again, going through high school the way I did, it was very, very easy kind of going. And I'm a planner in terms of my life goals. I mean, I'm not a good planner on paper in terms of, like taking notes and stuff. But I am a planner in terms of my life goals. I set my overarching goals, and then I set little middle goals along the way to kind of get me to my overarching plan, which is something that I'll talk about later on in this podcast. I think that's a really important portion of success, of whatever your success is, whether it's, relationship, creative, hobby, career, whatever your success is. It's important to set yourself goals, big goals. You know what I mean? I mean, setting your really big goals where you want to be, but also accepting that you're not going to get there immediately.
I don't entirely agree, but we'll get into that eventually.
Yeah. I mean, definitely we're going to be kind of agreeing or disagreeing. And that'll probably be another episode. I don't want to divulge too much. I went on a ramble there. But I had planned to get into engineering, go to one of the labs, make some decent money in engineering, because everybody tells you that engineers make so much money, and then start my own business from there. So put me about 5-6 years out before I'd really realistically be looking at starting any business.
So your dream has kind of always been to just start a business.
Yeah. My dream has definitely always been to start a business, which...
So engineering school was kind of just a means to an end.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, realistically, what I had created for myself was a backup for a backup. My backup was IT, because I knew that people were always going to need their computers fixed. Because I just can't imagine a reality where we don't use computers unless we get sent back to the Stone Age, in which case I'm going to be out of a job for a couple of reasons. And
the Flintstones had real estate agents, I'm sure.
You know what? They probably did, honestly. Selling Ugrox rock. So basically, absolutely. Any engineering field was kind of a backup for me, where I told myself, they can reliably get jobs. Their jobs make enough money for me to invest into a company. That's going to be my starting path. I never really considered real estate being anything, but that kind of changed a little bit, because as I went through college, I skated through my first semester, and I went to New Mexico Tech. Skated through my first semester, and then my second semester I hit a barrier, and I had all these great plans for where I was going and what I was doing with my life, and then all of a sudden I just kind of slammed into a brick wall and just stopped. And I can blame it on a lot of factors that were going on in my life. I can sit there and say that it was depression, or say that it was this or that or this. But that kind of goes into another thing that we'll talk about, which is kind of taking responsibility for what really happened, where yes, I was depressed. Yes, I was isolated. And those are factors I didn't have control over. But ultimately I had control over me doing my work and me going to my classes despite that. And
I too believe that you have control over being isolated, but...
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, again, though, you have to look at... New Mexico Tech is known for isolating its freshman students considerably, because New Mexico Tech, for those of you guys who don't know, New Mexico Tech is a school for a lot of the smart engineering kids in New Mexico. We're talking Los Alamos labs, byproduct, yeah, children of engineers who, maybe they didn't want to go to an out-of-state school, they wanted to stay in-state, so they go to tech. So we're talking about a lot of people who kind of coop themselves up in their dorms and just play games. So it's not so much that you don't have the power to go out and socialize, but also that the
Nobody
people
really
around you
goes out to socialize.
Yeah, people just aren't going out to socialize. And, the further you get in, people will break out of their shell and they start to go to parties and stuff. And then you start to really meet people. And I had a friend group, but even they were very kind of swamped with their work. And nobody really, checked in on me. Not that it was their responsibility to. Just that I never really... I isolated myself considerably because of, my depression and because of whatnot. And again, those were the factors I didn't have 100% control of. I did have a little bit of control over isolation, absolutely. But what it boiled down to is that I wasn't getting the work done that I needed to get done.
For sure.
And I started failing classes. Now, because of my experience in high school, I came close to failing, a pre-calculus class in high school, just because I started slacking. I got senioritis, stopped going to class for a lot of it, woke up late, and whatnot. But at the last minute, I always pulled it out. Always found a way to do all the work that I needed to do to, schmooze over my teacher by being like, oh, well, I really know what's going on, blah, blah, blah. All that stuff, I was able to kind of successfully get a passing grade at the last minute. And you just can't really do that at an engineering school.
Mm-mm.
You know what I mean? A lot of those professors, they don't take the same shit that other ones do. And I also wasn't interested in doing that because I knew I hadn't earned it. I knew I didn't, deserve anything, a handout. So, I went on throughout the semester, started skipping classes, started skipping assignments, and then it got so bad I was starting to skip tests. And for those of you who are in college, you'll understand why it is such a severe idea of even skipping tests. Because even the laziest kid in your class, who you never see throughout the semester, probably shows up for tests. I wasn't even going to tests. So definitely like really, really bad. And then still I had this idea in the back of my head that at any moment I was going to kind of pull it out for the big win. And it just never really happened. And I ended up failing a couple classes, but I ended up failing my second semester realistically and put on academic probation. So I kind of went into that summer with the mindset that I had failed, not really wanting to talk to a lot of people because I had never failed academically before, even though it's something that a lot of people have gone through. My friend group is all a bunch of nerds, so I was like, okay, well, maybe I'm the dumb one, because all of them are going through college just fine, and I'm the only one that was really, really struggling with it. Regardless of what it was I was struggling with, I didn't know. All I knew is I was struggling with college. Mm-hmm. And, I told myself, oh, well, I'll go in for my next semester, bigger, stronger, more focused, whatever. I'll learn from the mistake. I'll go in. And I didn't realize that part of the reason why I had failed was because I hated it. Mm-hmm. I absolutely hated being there. And I didn't realize that yet because society puts a lot of pressure on college kids to go to college and earn a degree. And it didn't occur to me that it was okay for me to hate something that I was doing.
Yeah, but also I think you maybe realized, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I think maybe the realization was there that this was just a means to an end, and maybe this wasn't the means. Maybe you had another way to get where you wanted to go, because it's not like your overall goal was like, I'm gonna finish college, I'm gonna be an engineer, and like that's my life goal. Like that wasn't it. Mm-hmm. It was just like, oh, I want to do this, so maybe engineering's the best avenue to get there. And maybe you realized, even subconsciously, that it wasn't.
And I think that was actually a big part of it. I was actually listening to another podcast today where one of the individuals was a Navy SEAL.
Oh, damn.
And he was talking about Hell Week, which is, to give you an idea, this particular Navy SEAL, he broke his leg in Hell Week. It started as a stress fracture, and they put so much stress on your body throughout Hell Week that stress fracture became a major fracture that put him up for 6 months. Mm-hmm. And I don't mean to get political, but I do actually want to recognize who that person is. That is Dan Crenshaw. He's a congressman. But that was kind of his story talking about Hell Week. One of the things that he had said, and that a lot of Navy SEALs say, is that if you go into the SEAL program, mm-hmm. Then with the idea that you have a plan B, with the idea that you have a backup plan, mm-hmm. you've already failed.
Yeah, where you're just like, oh, I'll just do this in the meantime.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's not, what they were saying, it's not bad to have contingency. It's not bad to have a backup plan. But if you get comfortable with the idea of accepting your backup, then you're already failing at your goal.
Yeah, if it's not necessarily a backup.
Yeah, it's like, if this doesn't work out, I always got that. That's not a good approach to take on things. And that's kind of what I was taking when it came to my approach at tech. I was using it as a backup, as just a means to an end. I wasn't taking risks. In my mind, I was taking the easy on rails path. Not that college is easy, but it doesn't take a lot of risk or, ideas like that to get into college. Now, I'll get to my opinions on college because I think college is a huge financial risk that isn't talked about by our society very much. I mean, you're talking about going in debt up to $100,000 or more, mm-hmm. And we don't talk about the fact that you're dedicating yourself to if you went and got a loan to flip a house, mm-hmm. that is the equivalent of about how much money you're going to spend on the average college tuition.
And people think, oh, I have to go to college instead of, say, flipping houses is your jam. That's what you want to get into. But you think that you need a college degree first. Or you think, which, for some things you do, but let's say in this case you don't. You don't need a college degree to go and flip houses. You really don't.
And
you
people
can take a couple classes. You can take, educating yourself is a big part of stuff. And I mean, I'm sure we'll get into that. But I think, take that. You're going from flipping houses is your dream, but you have to go to college first. As much as you're going to take out a loan for college, you could already be working on your dream.
Yeah. And that was kind of my viewpoint, too, when I was going through college, was 5 years is a lot to dedicate to something. And
that's a lot of time.
The biggest amount of doubt happened in that summer after that second semester, where I got involved with Rock, which of course is the real estate group that I'm with now, Rock Real Estate Partners. And I met some of the very hungry young minds that are here in the office. People like Ramon Casaus, who was 23, 24 when he started Rock Real Estate Partners. And some of the other very, young gentlemen that were here, who were my age when I would graduate, or a little bit older than how old I'd be when I graduated. And they were doing amazing things, and they were making a lot of money. And that was my main goal about going to engineering, was all about the money. I really didn't, I have a passion for explosives. I love explosives, but I was taking a minor in explosives engineering because they didn't offer a major. So I had already taken mechanical engineering as a side route to get to what I was actually interested in. Mm-hmm. So it was just kind of a backup on a backup on a backup plan that I was there. And then I get introduced to this really pumped, great culture, young group of people who showed me the power of the correct mindset, the power of the correct work ethic, and the fact that age just didn't have a factor to do with things.
That too, and I think the culture of everybody supporting everybody, everybody's pushing everybody. Yes, real estate is a competitive field, but at Rock, everybody is there, And it's like, if you need somebody to cover you, if you need somebody to show your client a house, somebody's going to be there for you. Even if they can't make money off of it, they're going to be there for you.
Well, and that was just it, is it was, being introduced to this culture, being introduced to this group of people really kind of changed my perspective of what I was capable of. Because growing up, and as I'm sure many of the people listening here will agree, they don't really talk about the power of starting your own business in high school. They don't talk about the power of, going into a trade school in high school. And when we talk about objective thinking, right, we're talking about just the logic and reason behind things. The amount of money that you're going to make from a college degree is very comparable to the amount of money you'll make going to a trade school if you're willing to travel. And a lot of people do. A lot of people go into college because they want to travel. They go into a degree field that will allow them to travel, not realizing that they could go to a trade school and get, let's say underwater, welding, make 6K, not 6K a year, 6 digits a year. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And
I make $6,000 welding pipes in Alaska.
Yeah, exactly. No, but I mean, they can make a considerable amount of money, as much as a college graduate, in half the time, and travel. And not just Alaska.
More than a college graduate.
Yeah,
Fuck.
In many cases. If you're over here in any sort of social whatever degree, it's your outcome for income is not great.
Yeah, communications. I mean, not bashing communications majors, but what are you doing?
Yeah, there aren't too many things there's a lot of businesses out there you can't make a whole lot of money off. One of the things I also didn't understand, and we'll actually probably have Ramon on this podcast at some point. He has a business degree. I never understood getting a business degree, because I always kind of imagined you were just kind of delaying the inevitable.
Yeah, I agree with that for sure.
But I didn't go to college for business, so what the hell would I know about what's in a business degree? Again, I don't want to talk about anything I wouldn't know about on this podcast. But
as someone who considered a business degree, I am glad that I did not pursue it.
Yeah. So I mean, to give you guys to get back to my original point, I was introduced to these very highly motivated people. And it changed my perspective. And I'll talk about the power of surrounding yourself with the right people. Because I feel like with social media as a bubble, we're kind of all in our high school cliques right now on social media. We're friended to the people we want to be friended with. We're commenting on the people we want to comment with. And Facebook and Instagram and Twitter picks up on those things, and it starts to only show us the things that we've interacted with. So we're kind of in our own little bubble right now, which can trap people in a very bad way of thinking. Something you see, in high school, what you're told in high school sometimes is that you're hanging out with the wrong crowd. And as a high school student, you kind of laugh at that, like, yeah, whatever. But as an adult, you learn very quickly that if you had continued to hang out with certain people, or if you had taken the opportunity to go and do a certain thing that you said no to, it could have ended very poorly. And I imagine, especially here in Albuquerque, because there's a lot of bad influences here, there are some people who can relate to that, where they said no to one thing, and that turned out to be the one thing that could have really screwed up their potential to get anywhere in life. Mm-hmm. And that is, the very extreme example of surrounding yourself with the wrong people. But we don't really talk about what it means to surround yourself with the right people. And for the first time, I was surrounded by the right people. They were showing me that I didn't have to have a degree. I didn't have to be 30 years old before I started a business. I just had to take myself seriously. Mm-hmm. And in turn, people would start to take me seriously as well, which is something that I've seen time and time again working in real estate. And I originally got into Rock doing IT work for them, so that backup plan did come in handy. My original one, I did not need the second backup for my backup. I did not need to invest 5 years of time into backup. My tech experience came from a high school education.
Mm-hmm. So, it wasn't like you went to school to do that. It was just that, you... Yeah, I mean, you did go to school to do that, but not taking time out of your normal high school education.
Yeah, to give you guys an idea, it was an elective in my high school that I could take. And at Data, it's a very educational IT, representation. It really walks you through it and teaches you more than a lot of people will learn.
It's almost like a trade school in high school.
Oh, yeah.
Like, a lot more than I feel like people who actually work in IT fields know. That in my experience, I've met a lot of intelligent IT people, but I've also met a lot of people who are reading off of a script.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we did get dual credit was an option. I mean, what we learned is what you'll learn in many college classes. Mm-hmm. And we had college level equivalency for, 1 or 2 years worth of 1 or 2 semesters. Well, no, I would say 3 or 4 semesters worth of education. Absolutely. We were trained at a very high level. So, I mean, I didn't have to sacrifice 5 years of my life. Again, take things as they come. If you're going to be somewhere, my dad always taught me to take every opportunity I could to learn something new, because he was in the military. He went to Ranger school. He went to all sorts of different Army schools just because they'd ask him if he wanted to, and he'd say yes. He didn't care if it was underwater basket weaving. He was about it. And that's a huge benefit, because no matter what you do...
Underwater basket weaving? Where do I sign up?
No, but I mean, if you have the opportunity to learn anything, it's helpful. Because trust me, whether you're going into sales or anything else, being able to relate to people and being able to talk about anything is so helpful in any career.
I don't mean to toot my own horn, but that is one of those really dope qualities that I have, that I'm glad that I have, because it gives me the upper hand, being able to not just talk about real estate, but I know a little bit about this and a little bit about that, and it helps me talk to, a vast majority of people rather than kind of sectioning myself off to just what I know.
Mm-hmm. No, absolutely. I was talking to a client today, and I think I earned his business based off the fact that he and I were talking, and I actually had a lot of ATVs, and because I have a mechanical background as well, working on my truck, he and I got talking about cars and stuff, and working on old cars. I gave him some suggestions on a carburetor he was rebuilding of what I knew, and that really kind of helped create a relationship between this client who I had never met before and myself. It's a huge benefit. Always take opportunities to learn things. But I'd gotten into Rock in order to do this IT job for Ramon. Got thinking, I was like, you know what? Screw it. I'm going to be a broker. And my mother works at Rock. And so she kind of pumped up my ego a little bit, told me that I could be a broker. So having that support system was a huge benefit for me. And we kind of wanted to create, in a way, an artificial version of that support system with the community of this podcast. Because not everybody has the benefit of good parents. Everybody has the benefit of support. And, Hannah will get into that because her background definitely involves it. But, there's a lot to be said for what that support did to help push me to do that. The one thing I didn't have the support of course, though, was my father, because he took a lot of pride in having a kid who was in engineering school, a kid who was going to be an engineer. personally. And, he did always tell me to pursue, he has a lot of respect for like the Mike Rowe Foundation for trade schools and other things of that nature. And so he doesn't believe that college was the way to go, but he was definitely proud to have somebody who was doing it. And so that was a very hard conversation that I had to have with my father. And at the time I had made the decision, he was up in Illinois and I was down here in New Mexico. And I got the opportunity to fly up there and help him out with something he was doing. And I had to have that conversation because personally, there are things that you have to take head on because they're going to challenge you and they're going to be uncomfortable, but it's the only way that you're going to learn how to do it and grow from it. One of the perspectives I took early on in high school when I got my first job was to always jump and volunteer for things that put me out of my comfort zone. And I think that's extremely important.
You can only grow when you are out of your comfort zone. And that is an uncomfortable concept for people to grasp.
Mm-hmm.
And it's an uncomfortable concept for me to grasp, or was an uncomfortable concept for me to grasp, because I have severe anxiety. Yeah. It's not awful. There are people with much worse anxiety, but mine was detrimental to my life. And I had to, honestly, I just had to get over it.
And that's one of those things where people don't realize, yes, there's absolutely a chemical
hurdle
to get over when it comes to any mental illness. But I'm specifically talking about anxiety, because I've met and interacted with a lot of people who had unbelievable crippling anxiety, like couldn't order their food at the fast food restaurant level of anxiety. That happens when somebody starts with that chemical hurdle and then they never practice social skills. Socializing and confidence is not something that you are born with. It is a practice skill. It is a muscle that you have to exercise like any other.
Or it will atrophy.
Or it will absolutely atrophy beyond the point that you realize. And you have to build your mind the same way that you build your body. We all understand the basic physiology behind working out. We understand that, you're stressing out the muscle's going beyond what it's usually put under, the stress it's usually put under, and then it, damages and then builds itself from there, from what it learned. That's the same impact you have to take in life, and the same impact in building your mentality, is that you're going to put yourself under stress. You're going to put yourself in uncomfortable situations. This whole podcast, for some people, going from objective to objective each week, is going to be uncomfortable. It's going to put them out of the place that they are in standard.
Mm-hmm.
Their default
zone.
Yeah, way out of their comfort zone. And you have to acknowledge that you're going to get out of that comfort zone. You're going to have some failures. You're going to screw up your order at the fast food restaurant, right? You're sitting there terrified of talking to this fast food kid. You're going to go up there, way out of your comfort zone, order something, screw it up, ask him to change it, and you know what that fast food kid's going to do?
He's going to be like, yeah, for sure. I got you, bro. And you're going to be like, oh, that wasn't that bad. Whereas, you forgot to ask for no pickles. If you're like, hey, man, actually, can I get no pickles on that? That 16-year-old kid's going to be like, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that 16-year-old kid's not even going to notice. We see our failures as so much more than anybody around us does. So you're going to fail, and you're going to learn from that. Mm-hmm. In that particular example, you're going to learn that the fast food kid doesn't give a shit about what you screwed up on your order. And you're going to take what you learned, and you're going to push the boundaries a little bit the next time, too. And eventually learn that's just kind of how it works. You're going to put yourself out of your comfort zone. You're going to grow a lot from it time and time again. And then you just get comfortable with being uncomfortable, right? I make a lot of phone calls now. I don't enjoy making phone calls. I had a lot of anxiety over making phone calls when I first started as a broker. Now, I still am uncomfortable. I still don't enjoy it. I still get a little bit of anxiety, but I just hit the green button and I just figure it out as I go. Because I've learned that that's what I have to do to get myself out of my comfort zone. I've gotten used to being uncomfortable. I'm comfortable with the idea of it.
For sure. We got on a tangent there.
Yes, but to bring it back, we're talking about I had to put myself out of my comfort zone and talking to my dad. Because ultimately my fear with dropping out of college was that people were going to
look
down on me, see me as a failure, see that I took the easy way out. So I wasn't going to take the easy way out by changing up what I was doing with my dad. I wasn't going to take the easy way out and telling him that I was changing my career path. So I had to take it on headstrong. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I definitely kind of wanted to take the headstrong approach and prove people's presumptions wrong, that I was confident with what I had to do. And I can't just tell myself that I'm confident, but not follow through with what a confident person would do, which is believe that they're right and confront it as though you are, as though you are correct, and not shy away from the topic. You know what I mean? Because you're sometimes you got to follow your gut, and your gut's right. And that's going to be the next episode after this is following that feeling. But that's how I felt I had to handle it. So I went and I talked to him, and he wasn't pleased at first, but he definitely kind of accepted the concept that I was just very unhappy at tech and I needed to make a change. And in a way, in doing this, I didn't give myself a backup plan. I didn't give myself an out. I have no backup plan if real estate doesn't work. Mm-hmm. And sure, I have IT or whatever, but I'm never going to be satisfied with how much I'm going to make in IT. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? I'm always going to be wanting to be kind of a leader, kind of run my own business, because I got a taste of that with Ramon when I came to do the tech work for him. He wanted me to put together a business plan for the best service for him to use and then give him a price for what I wanted. He never gave me a quote. He never said, I'm willing to pay this much. I had to come to him. And that was the first time I'd ever been put in that position. Mm-hmm. But I liked it a lot. I liked that I got to create the terms of what work I did and nobody else did. Mm-hmm. And so and again, another thing that kind of pushed me towards being a broker. But I would never be satisfied with IT. And I know that now. Mm-hmm. And I know that I have no out. This is what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And in a way that gives me a lot of empowerment, knowing that I just have to go forward and keep going forward. And when I'm uncomfortable, I have to remember what it was like to fail. And I think, that's why I made such a big change, is because when I was in tech, I could feel in my gut that I wasn't supposed to be here, that I didn't want to be there. And I eventually followed that feeling. Mm-hmm. Where I thought that it was an unhealthy amount of doubt, when I thought that it was a seed in my head and in my gut, because I felt it from day one. I mean, I remember I wasn't even excited to get my acceptance papers to tech, and New Mexico Tech is a 33% acceptance rate, and I wasn't excited to get my acceptance papers.
That's low.
I mean, and it's not like MIT, but it's low. It's down there. It is an achievement to beat 66% of other applicants to be able to get into a good school like that. So I should have been excited, but I just wasn't. And that should have been a big sign that I obviously wasn't
gonna be happy there.
Yeah, gonna be happy there. It wasn't what I wanted to do. So I finally acknowledged that gut feeling and made a really big risk, because I was never a risk taker, made a really big risk by jumping into the world of real estate, where I never know where my next check is going to come from. Mm-hmm. I was always a very assured person. If I go to college, if I do the work, I will graduate. I will get a degree. I will get a job if I get decent grades. It's all very simple, on track sort of thing. And then for once, I was like, I have no idea if this is going to work out. I have no idea if I'm going to make any money on this.
But that goes back to having those goals. Your goals haven't changed. And that's where your drive comes from, is those goals. So it's like if you have your goals in mind, and you are always every day striving to meet those goals, you will succeed. And it doesn't have to be, my goals are owning my own business or doing whatever. Your goal can be as simple as somebody told you that you couldn't do something, and now you're going to do everything in your power to fucking do it. That can be a goal. Just have one.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing that I learned from that experience was, of course, that I could fail at that goal. So I had to work twice as hard to get there. Mm-hmm. And, and I don't want to take the wind out of your sails, because, again, like what you were just talking about goes a lot into your experience. Because I want to give all the listeners different perspectives here. And, my perspective is one of normal academic approach with, a pretty decent supporting family, but yours wasn't. I mean, you can go ahead and talk about where your education came from and the kind of support that you saw.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of started in public school like most kids do. I actually started in a Montessori school, which was a different experience, but I was young. It was cool. I went through APS until 5th grade, and then 6th through halfway through my 9th grade year, I was homeschooled. And it wasn't, your basic idea of homeschooling. It wasn't, my parents sat down with me every day and we had a lesson plan, and it wasn't like that. It was my parents decided that they wanted their kids to be homeschooled, bought us a box of curriculum books and gave it to us and was like, here you go, fuck it, pretty much.
Yeah, you didn't really have a whole lot of guidance that people would be used to for having a teacher or like from a parent for most homeschooling. You were kind of left on your own.
I was left on my own. And not only was I left on my own at such a young age, I was left on my own with my 2 younger siblings. My parents both worked full-time. They owned a business for most of my childhood. And it was, not only was I teaching myself as well as 2 other kids, I was taking care of myself as well as 2 other kids. And as a 6th grader, what are you, like 11, 12 years old?
Yeah.
That was a lot of, I don't want to say power, but responsibility to put on a kid that young. And I just did it, So I got myself through middle school, and I've passed. I figured it out. I got to high school, and about halfway through my freshman year, I really reached this point of like, fuck it, where I was not intrigued by education at that level. I was tired. I really wasn't doing anything. I was like working to no end. I was going to graduate, and then what? High school graduation, because I was homeschooled, because I was doing all the work myself, wasn't this like goal that I wanted to reach.
You just kind of get a diploma in the mail.
Exactly. And like with homeschooling, you really can't get a legitimate diploma. So why go through 3.5 more years of high school if I could just get a GED, And at one point I was again super depressed, super, I don't know what the fuck I'm going to do. I don't know where I want to go. I don't know what I want to be. I did not have goals. And I think that that's something that really separates me and you, is that I did not have a plan. You had a plan for your life as young as 15. I didn't know what the hell I was going to do. And I kind of started with, maybe I do want to go to college. Maybe I want to get that business degree. I ended up not following through with that, but that's kind of what fueled my fire to get my GED. And I took a break for about, I would say, closer to a year, studying for my GED. I took my SAT, which I didn't end up needing, but I did well on it. My SAT score was the equivalent to like a 4.0 GPA. So I'm not stupid by any means. I'm just not.
And you were 16 at the time.
Yeah, I was 16. I was not, a lot of the kids in that room were much older than I was.
Yeah, so you were 16, you were self-taught, and you only really got halfway through the high school education. Not only did you pass your GED, but you also did very well on your SAT.
Yeah, I did well on, both tests. And when I went in to take my GED, there were me and another girl that were, 16, 17 age. Everyone else was like in their 30s. Mm-hmm. They were grown people, which, go after your education. That's cool. I'm just going to pat myself on the back for doing it as young as I did. And I did 5 hours of straight testing, no breaks, and I fucking passed.
And, and that goes into something that, you and I were talking about yesterday, where it really doesn't matter. It doesn't always matter what it is the objective is. Sometimes it just matters how you performed at the objective. You know what I mean? Anybody who disrespects you for getting a GED but respects me is an idiot. Because ultimately, I didn't do anything different than you did when I stopped going to college and pursued something else. The only difference is you did it at 16, and not only did you do it at 16, but you really kicked ass at it.
Thank you.
Yeah, because you had a focused mindset in where you were going and what you wanted to do.
And that's the thing is I didn't have those long-term goals. I just knew that I didn't want people to think I was an idiot. That was my goal. So I took my my SAT, and I got a good fucking grade on it. I took my GED and I passed it flying colors. And then I was like, well, what am I going to do with this? And I kind of started looking into a couple things. I really wanted to do something that I was gonna not love, but enjoy. Mm-hmm. I wanted to do something that was creative, but I didn't want to be an artist. So I looked into cosmetology school. And I feel like a lot of people give, like real estate brokers, hairstylists a bad rep. Mm-hmm. Hairstylists are dumb. Hairstylists, oh, I wish I could do what you do. I wish I could just play with hair all day. And that's not what it is. And honestly, that's kind of what I thought it was. Going into it at 16, I was like, shit, I'm going to learn how to braid. I'm going to learn how to color hair. It's going to be fucking cake. It was not. It was very difficult. It wasn't horrible. I mean, I passed. I was the beauty school equivalent of a valedictorian. Out of the 7 people who started in my class, I was the only one that graduated. Forgot where I was going with that.
Yeah, I mean, only one that graduated kind of performed at a level, kind of proving again what you had done with the GED in the sense that you were the youngest in the classroom. And
I was the youngest in the entire school.
Yeah.
I sat down on my first day and, they do that classic, everybody go around the room and say, one thing about yourself. And my one thing was that I was 16. And nobody was like, wow, that's awesome. Everyone looked at me and asked, are you allowed to be here? Mm-hmm. I was that kid.
Yeah.
And, a lot of that went into my grandfather, who's a very conservative, mainstream kind of guy, told me that he would pay for my college wherever I wanted to go. And so when I said I want to be, a beautician, he told me that he would pay for my schooling when I decided to do something that would benefit the world, because hairstylists were a dime a dozen. And that pissed me the fuck off. Yeah. It really did. And that's what fueled me. I was going to be the beneficial hairstylist. I was going to pass. I was going to fucking take it by the reins and just do it. And I did. And I kicked ass at it. And at 17 years old, I got licensed and I worked at one of the top. I worked in Albuquerque's best salon.
Yeah. Yeah, which is, I mean, that sort of viewpoint is just kind of bullshit, because I can tell you right now that the stuff that I've seen her do with hair, she really truly is very talented with hair to this day. And it's not what she does anymore. And I'm sure, she'll get into that over the toll on her body. But she was extremely talented, and she still takes some clients and she does amazing things with their hair that they've never had anybody do with their hair. Mm-hmm. Meanwhile, what I could have done with my mechanical engineering was anything from building cheap fucking Walmart shelves, because, that's really beneficial to the world. Mm-hmm. Or building bombs, which is equally probably not very beneficial to the world in the long run. So it's like, anybody who tells you that, anybody who devalues what it is you're doing, you got to use that as fuel.
Yeah, you have to. And that's the thing is, I took that and I ran with it. And yes, I upset a couple clients. Yes, I failed at things. No, I didn't make people as happy. Yes, there were some times where people spent, 3+ hours in my chair because it had to be perfect and I had messed up on something and I needed to fix it. And those were all things that I had to learn and grow from, and ultimately made me a better stylist as well as a better person. But the reason I kept doing it, and the reason I started doing it in the first place, was that wow factor of being able to turn somebody around in the chair and say, this is the new you. Mm-hmm. And there were a good couple times when, I brought people to tears. I helped. One of the most powerful haircuts I ever did was this woman who had been in an abusive relationship. And she had grown her hair out because her husband didn't let her cut it, because long hair was beautiful. And, you're ugly if you have short hair. And we gave her the most dramatic A-line bob. And she looked like a fucking badass. And I remember being able to take pictures of her and her telling me thank you. And it was such a genuine thank you. Like, by cutting off her hair, I had cut off her ex-husband. I had released all of this frustration and pain and anger from her life. And, you know, maybe hairstylists are a dime a dozen, but I changed that woman's life.
Yeah, that experience isn't a dime a dozen.
Exactly. I created so many good relationships in my couple years as a hairstylist that I wouldn't change it. Yes, I'm not a hairstylist anymore. It did take a huge toll on my body, but I don't regret it. I don't regret it at all.
And for any of you guys who are kind of rolling your eyes at the idea of a hairstylist saying it took a huge toll on their body, I want you guys to imagine right now standing all day, usually in heels, because again, we're talking about a salon here, you know, where the hairstylists have to take up an idea of fashion and being kind of hip and unique. Standing in heels, hunched over somebody's head with both of your elbows above your ears. And I want you guys to do that for 2 hours and tell me that it's easy on your body.
And I did it for 8 to 10 hours every day.
Well, and that's one of those things where, you know, personally, I would have scoffed at the idea of a hairstylist complaining about the body until I had met her while she was doing hair and seen just how busy, how energetic, and how much, you know, physical action it really took to do it. Which kind of goes into, again, don't devalue what anybody does, because you don't usually understand what it is, the intricacies of what they do, what kind of toll it takes on their body, what kind of toll it takes on their mind, what kind of stress that they take on to be able to accomplish something. And ultimately, there is a place for everybody, and there's a place for every, you know, individual's wants and needs and goals and what they want to do. There is a need there. Sometimes it's not massive, which I'll talk about. You know what I mean? If you're going into college for a very basic, you know, degree for, you know, let's say like Greek history major, well, you better be a goddamn great Greek historian, because there is not a very large demand for that. But again,
you better get a PhD, because nobody fucking does shit with that.
Yeah. I'm just saying, like, I mean, you take on, if that's your goal, you know, again, take things on the headstrong approach. Don't shy away from having to excel at it, because in some cases you do have to excel. But I mean, I don't want to get you too far off of your train of thought when talking about kind of your experience into hairstylist, and then of course now how you kind of got to here from there.
So from there, it did take a large toll on my body. I wasn't, you know, making as much as I would like to. Hairstyling is not an easy business to be in when you're trying to, you know, support yourself. So I kind of went back to my roots. Like I said, my parents owned a business. I did a lot of, you know, basic admin things for my mom when I was young. I've been working since I was 12 years old. I have had experiences with, you know, filing and inventory and data entry and things like that. And that was always something that I excelled at. You know, it's a basic, stupid thing, but to me, it was what kind of drove me. It was being the most organized. It was being the best at that. And I wanted to pursue something that was more administrative. And so I did. I left and I worked for an insurance company for a couple months, and it was a learning experience. I learned a lot about who I was, about the kind of people that I wanted to work for, about the kind of morals that I had as an individual, the kind of morals that I was looking for in a company. And ultimately that position didn't work out, which was one of the first times that I had failed. I had always had people doubting me. I had always had, you know, some sort of fuel to push me farther and farther and farther. And I had never really failed. I had been put in a lot of difficult positions. I had been put in a lot of shitty positions, but ultimately that was the first time I had failed. And I took it hard. I took it really hard. And I was unemployed for about 3 months. And it pushed me back into a rut that I hadn't been in for a while, for a good couple years. And I just I kept pushing. I didn't let myself get as far into the rut as I had been previously. And I was looking for opportunities. I wanted something that, you know, I wanted to do something that I really wanted to do. I didn't want to in the meantime thing. And with my experience and with my, extensive resume, I could have gotten a job within a day. I had people offering me jobs within a week, but I didn't want them. Mm-hmm. I wanted to do something that I wanted to do because I was tired of, from my last job, doing the bitch work.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you took a risk. You're talking about making a big change in your life. You took the risk of remaining unemployed for a little while.
To do something kick-ass.
To do something that you knew you'd enjoy and knew that you could fully apply yourself in. Mm-hmm. Which don't get me wrong, I think that's kind of a bit of a more expert level advice. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And what we'll get into later on is that when you're in those ruts, when you're in those positions, you never let yourself get too stagnant. Mm-hmm. I mean, you'd clean, you'd do laundry, you'd try and keep active to not let yourself get into that rut.
Yeah, I for sure didn't, lay in. There were some days where I did lay in bed all day. I played video games all day. I watched YouTube all day. There were days where I was just like, fuck the world, fuck everything, fuck everybody. And that's not the right mindset to have. And I did have to, do the dishes, make my bed, do laundry, take the dog for a walk to keep myself motivated. And, eventually I found myself in the same place. I have, a position here at Rock now where I do truly feel every day challenged. I feel challenged. I feel supported. I feel like I have this environment finally where I can fail and people will help me get back up. I have the resources to be able to grow from failures instead of falling flat on my face. And I also, have the opportunity to push myself. And that's, for me, not being able to push myself is what makes me go stagnant, is what makes me lose interest in a position. And in real estate, everything's changing. It's always changing. I'm not a broker, but I am in an administrative position where I do, a good majority, I wouldn't say a majority, but a good part portion of a broker's job.
Yeah, to give you guys an idea, because again, I mean, I want you guys to realize that, she might be my co-host, but we are very much equals on different sides of the spectrum. I went into being a broker because I'm a very kind of energetic, very talk to people, very socializing. That's what I really love to do. My favorite part about my job is that there have been times where I sit in a cigar lounge smoking cigars with other commercial brokers, other business owners, and that's considered being on the clock. I love that. That's what I love about my job, because I love talking to those people. I love that feeling of like Mad Men, sitting there with my whiskey and cigar socks while I sit here and talk business with someone. I really enjoyed that, but that's not for everyone. That's not for people like you, where that just doesn't interest you. That's not what you enjoy to do.
And it's not that I don't enjoy to talk to people. I'm a very customer service focused person. I love being able to talk to people. I'm just not good at selling things. Yeah. And there is a large majority of what I do that is kind of selling the broker, selling Rock. So I am by nature, I guess, a salesperson, but I can't rely on that.
Well, and she sells via actions. I sell via talk. She sells via actions. To give you an idea of what a broker does. Right? A real estate broker is responsible for, getting a listing with you, handling the contracts, handling the legal information, getting a sign out in front of your yard, negotiating the deal, getting marketing out there. And with technology and with things have grown, because again, we're not talking about, selling Ugrok's Rock. I don't know if that was in this recording or not. I don't know if you guys will get that joke.
It is.
Good. We've done a couple cuts today, but it's no longer just selling a rock. You know what I mean? There's a lot of information. There's a lot of dynamics with social media and with technology that's very important to take a hold of. And it's become too much for a broker to do and earn 6%. 6% of a house sale is not a small amount. And you want to make sure that, you're doing something that's worth 6%. And so what we've done at Rock, what's been done at Rock, is the broker is, my main focus is to sell myself. My main focus is to get business. Her main focus is to do a very large portion of a broker's job. Her responsibility now, once I get a listing contract to her, she handles getting professional photography scheduled. She handles getting the sign out there, the lockbox out there. She handles getting any further documentation that's needed. She handles getting the details for the listing. a lot of work goes into what it is that she does. And I'm not the most organized person, so I absolutely need somebody who does that job. You know, I was the one who started it. I was horrible at it. I passed it on to somebody else who improved it. And now we've passed it on to Hannah, who is probably the pinnacle of what it could possibly be. She's made changes that have been needed for months. And she's come in here like a freaking hailstorm. I mean, you've changed all sorts of stuff for the better. So by no means do I want somebody to listen to this podcast, listen to my viewpoint, and think that I'm the one that's killing it here, because she's killing it on her own path throughout the admin and what she does. She's amazing at what she does. She puts a lot of hard work, a lot of focus, and it takes a lot of drive to be able to do that, because I can't do that job. I have done that job. I literally started that job, and I failed at it.
Awful at it.
I was awful at it. I dropped the ball all the time. I'm not an organized person. So, by no means do I want anybody to see us as anything but equal, kind of as we're talking about this, because I think people tend to go towards the person who's the more salesman, because I'm, of course, again, I'm the one who's sitting here talking and selling myself all day, so people will naturally think, oh, well, that guy's really impressive, and I don't want them to short sell what it is that she does. But, kind of moving on, you kind of learned a lot from your experience, kind of moving from place to place.
I mean, to wrap it up, honestly, in conclusion, you don't always need somebody to be there for you. Yes, it's nice. Yes, that's what we want. But in my case, it was the lack of support that has taken me thus far. It was the lack of people, holding my hand, being there for me, that is what brought me this far. And no, I didn't have goals. I didn't have an overarching goal. I still honestly don't. My goal is to be the absolute best version of myself. My goal is to show, my peers, my employer every day that I am worth the time and that I will make your life easier. Mm-hmm. And for the people who don't have great parents, for the people who don't have people supporting them, you got to do it your fucking self, dude. You can't rely on other people to support you to get where you want to be, because ultimately that's on you. And if you can't come to terms with that, you're not going to go fucking anywhere.
If you can't take responsibilities for your failures, then you're never going to be able to take responsibility for your successes.
You will never have successes. And if you do, they'll be very small. Yeah. So grab life by the fucking balls and have the balls to be who you want to be without having to have somebody hold your hand. Without
anybody's permission.
Fuck.
Yeah. I mean, and that's the takeaway here is don't be afraid to follow that gut feeling where you know what's best for you. You know what you're interested in. You know what you're capable of.
I could have easily, when my grandfather told me that he wouldn't help me with my, education expenses, I could have been like, oh, well, I guess I'm not doing that. But I didn't. I figured it out. And, I have student loans, but I've also learned a lot, and I'm still a kick-ass hairstylist.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And that's kind of what it all sort of boils down to. Don't be afraid to make a change. Don't be afraid to fail. That's kind of the biggest thing here is we've both failed. We've both made major failures. You know what I mean? Dropping out of a great engineering school is not something to take lightly. And sure, I guess I could go back, but I wouldn't be able to go back with, I'd be, 2 years behind everyone that I went to college with. And it's just not an option. It's embarrassing sometimes to talk about my experience through college. But again, I learned from that failure,
I don't think, personally, from an outside source, I don't think that the true failure was dropping out of college. I think that your failure was, of course, letting yourself fail. But dropping out of college was not a failure. Dropping out of college was a catalyst to your success.
No, you're right. And I should rephrase that. My failure was, of course, failing my classes.
Yeah.
My failure was not going to my classes. My failure was letting my depression and my isolation get the best of me and to not acknowledge that I was failing in the first place. That was my failure. leaving college and going somewhere else was me making that change. It was me kind of making a leap, taking a risk, just as you did, in order to get here. And that's kind of the major takeaway, is that when you go through life, you're going to have failures. You're going to have times where you're uncomfortable. You're going to have times where people doubt you. You're going to have times where you're going to have to face things head on.
And I mean, as cheesy as it is, you truly do fail your way to success. You
do. You absolutely do. And it's so overplayed. And that's, I don't want to sit here and talk about, memes and the crap that's shared around on social media.
I don't mean to sound like a cat poster, but...
Yeah. But I'm going to be honest with you here right now. When it comes down, I'm somebody who's your age. If you're in your 20s, we are the same age. If you're in high school, we're only like 3-4 years away in terms of our age. Mm-hmm. Somebody your age right now who has experience in dealing with this shit is telling you you are only going to ever get better by surrounding yourself with the right people, by taking on failures, by putting yourself out of your comfort zone, and by learning from the shit that kicks your ass and applying it to what you believe you enjoy doing and what you believe you're going to be great at.
I feel like the biggest lesson people like you can learn is don't become the status quo because that's the status quo. Be who you want to be. Do what you want to do, even if it goes against everything that everybody around you is telling you.
Yeah.
And for the people like me, don't listen to what anybody says. Don't listen to people telling you that you can't do it. Don't listen to the people who won't support you. Find the people that will.
Yeah.
Find the people who, will be there for you every day when you wake up and you're like, fuck, I don't want to do this shit today. And they're right there with you to do it with you. And you have to make sacrifices. You have to be that person for yourself until you find that person or that group of people or, those colleagues, those coworkers. And another thing too, you're never too young, you're never too old.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You're never too young, you're never too old to make a change. And again, I mean, I feel like the notion is thrown around in society a lot that says, do whatever you want to do, make your dreams come true. And I want to make something clear. That isn't necessarily what I'm saying. There's going to be shit you don't want to do in life. But you need to create a goal of what it is you want to do and always be willing to go through the mud and through the dirt to get there. That is what that's what the original saying was. That was the original intention of saying, love what you do and you'll never work a day in your life. There will absolutely be days where you work your ass off and that you hate every single fucking moment of it. There will absolutely be days where you don't enjoy it. But ultimately, you have to get through that. You have to go in headstrong because you know that you're going to be happier for having done it. And so what I'm saying, follow your dreams, make your goals, but then make them fucking happen. Don't just be there for the ride. Make it happen yourself.
Yeah, don't be on the train, be the fucking conductor.
Exactly. With that said, going into a little bit of what you said, we had both been in ruts before. We understand that, no amount of motivational speaking is going to get you out of a rut. Well, potentially it will, but only with understanding that you got to take things one step at a time. I don't expect everyone to listen to this podcast and say, you know what, I am going to go out and be a millionaire. I am going to go out and be one of the best artists. I am going to go out and follow my dreams. I don't expect everyone to listen to one episode of this and get there. So our goal, of course, is to get everybody there. Our goal is to get every one of our listeners here so that we have a community that's around motivating each other, but also understanding that all of us have been in a place where nothing could motivate us, where we were completely defeated. So we're starting at ground one with our objectives. We're starting with those of you who are listening right now that are completely defeated, that are depressed, that are anxiety ridden. They don't know what to do. They don't know how to accomplish it. And the idea of having anything, beyond waking up at all seems like a fucking, a dream. Mm-hmm. Seems like a fever dream. The idea that you could actually be anywhere or get anything done. For those of you, here's our objective. For everyone. When you wake up tomorrow morning, make your bed.
That's it. Just make your bed.
That's it. That's all we're asking you to do, because success is one small step at a time. This is your small step. This is the one thing that you can do to get yourself closer to your goals. It's going to be making your bed. And this is going to be built on further on. So you're going to want to make sure you keep up, because we are going to build on the idea of making your bed. Objectives will become greater, and you're going to see some major improvement within, the first couple of weeks of listening to this podcast. You're going to feel like, hopefully you're going to feel like, you're getting something done, that you're finally in a place where you have a foundation, get your life in order a little bit. Because I know when I was depressed at tech, I sometimes didn't even get out of bed to take a shower.
Yeah. So for those of you who are, rolling your eyes or giggling at us for saying this, good for you. You are above where we were.
Yeah.
Because at some point in my life, I had a mental breakdown over having to choose what pair of socks I was going to wear.
Yeah. And people think that we're badasses for our age, and we've both had times where we were completely defeated. And if you are rolling your eyes or you are laughing at this, then here's my objective to you. Share this to somebody who is going through that.
Yeah.
Because we all know somebody who is. And I can guarantee you that a lot of us will share that shit on social media and say, reach out to somebody who needs it, because we're thinking of ourselves and we're not thinking of the person who really does need it in our lives. So take this, share it to somebody who does need it. Share it to somebody who you feel would understand what we're talking about, who's going through what we've talked about going through. Tell them that not only are you there for them, but we are too. And we're here as a community to help build each other, to create a backbone for people who might not have one yet.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a bad thing to be honest with yourself and accept that you're in a place that's not good. But we're here to kind of help take it step by step and getting to a place where you can consider yourself a badass in whatever it is you do. And it's going to take a few months, and it's going to take a lot of dedication on our part and on your part. But right now, all you got to worry about is making your bed for a week.
So, in conclusion, make your fucking bed, and don't be afraid to be dogmatic. Peace.
We'll see you guys in episode 2.